Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Music and Moonsalts. I am your host, Chris Bordine, and you can follow me on Twitter at IbanezChris. It's a new month. We're in May, and so we are going to get started this month. We're going to do things in a little bit different order. We're going to start with the rock and roll retrospective. Normally, that's the last video of the month, but we're going to start off here. When you are seeing this, it will be the 15th anniversary of the Red Hot Chili Peppers album Stadium Arcadium. And I have a special guest coming on to talk about that. But before then, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. If you want to hear the audio of this podcast, just go to anchor.fm and the address will be down here at the bottom of the screen, and you can just go there, and it'll point you in whatever direction you want to go, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever floats your boat. So yeah, and last month, check out the videos or the audio podcast from last month. We had I did a big, or not a big, it wasn't that big, but it was a look back at Limp Bizkit's My Way and its use on WrestleMania 17. And WrestleMania 17 I covered with Matt Durr in its entirety, and we talked about that. And then I had Kyle come on, my brother, and we talked about the Foo Fighters album, Wasting Light. So it was a fun little month of April, and looking forward to get things rolling here in May. Now, there's a chance that you've already seen my unboxing of the Royal Blood, new Royal Blood album. I ordered the deluxe edition, and I did an unboxing and that type of deal here on the channel with all the cool stuff that came with that. So check that out if you haven't yet already. So, but as I said, I got a special guest, Spencer Love of Love Wrestling. Spencer and I were on a Twitch stream on the Fightful Twitch channel a couple months ago now. It was right around the time I released the draft, the WrestleMania draft with Jeremy and Joe. Jeremy asked me if I would come on. They do a late night Friday stream at around 11:30 p.m. Eastern every week, and usually it's just just fun banter. Like last week, as I'm recording this, they did bad dating stories and stuff like that. And when I was on, we did a bunch of drafts to kind of coincide with the draft I was putting out. And it was just like random stuff, like soft drinks, or there was that. There was NXT Takeover matches, and there was one other. Oh, TV theme songs. That's what it was. So it was just fun banter. And Spencer was on the stream as well, along with Jeremy, myself, and Joel Pearl, who's been on here before. And come to find out, he's a real cool dude, and into music as well as wrestling. And so I shot him a DM on Twitter and said, hey, I'd love to have you come on the show and talk about whichever one, either talk about an old pay-per-view or an old album. And he chose to talk about music. I'll get more into that when he comes on here in a bit. But no, Spencer's cool. Check out what he's doing over at Love Wrestling. He does some cool interviews. He had a interview with PCO that I listened to a couple weeks back that was really good. And yeah, he's just like I said, just a real cool dude. So sit tight, and Spencer will be on, and we'll talk about some Red Hot Chili Peppers. Okay, cool. We're going. All right, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, with me today, I have Spencer Love from Love Wrestling on. Talk about some Red Hot Chili Peppers. Spencer, how's it going today, man?
I'm good, man. How can I be upset? Like you said, we're here to talk about some RHCP. I can't be upset when that's the topic of conversation. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It's just going to be a good time.
Awesome. As I mentioned in my intro, you and I were on a Twitch stream together on the
Yeah.
over on the Fightful Twitch channel.
Yeah.
Like 2 months ago now already.
Yeah. Time flies
And
when you're throwing watches, hey?
and I was like, oh, Spencer's a cool dude, and he's into music and stuff. And then I saw Kiss Army in your Twitter bio, and I'm like, well,
2001.
obviously, like, we're gonna be friends. So I hit you up. I'm like, hey, do you want to come on my show and either talk wrestling or music, either one? And I sent you a list of pay-per-views and a list of albums, and you're like, dude, I have a Red Hot Chili Peppers tattoo. And I'm like, yeah. If I saw it, I didn't register. It was so late that night, like.
Oh man, as they tend to do, they go a little bit longer, it's always a good time. It's never a bad thing when they tend to go a little longer than expected.
No,
it's because you're having a good time.
Joel and Jeremy are great, so I had no problem with it. It's just like my cognitive ability at that point was probably like we were doing those drafts, and I'm like, I'm like on Google like top TV theme songs, like, because I'm like, I can't think on the fly like that, especially
there were a couple of times that Joel called me out for doing the same, and then I think he messaged me and I had to message him back later in the show because we were both reading off the same list at two different points. So you were far from the only one. Don't worry there. I certainly took a bit of a schooling in a lot of those drafts.
Yeah. So I guess to get started, so as I was saying, talking to you off camera or whatever you want to say, like obviously I know, like, the Chili Peppers are one of the greatest American bands of all time. Like, there's no disputing that, and obviously I know all the hits, so to speak, all the radio singles. And it's not like I have a problem with. They just never were one of my bands. They were like, okay, I like the radio songs, but I'm not really interested in exploring the catalog deeper. When did you first come in contact with the Chili Peppers, and when did they become like your band to the point where you're getting tattoos?
Actually, so Stadium was like the first album that really, really caught me because coming out in 06, I was just coming out of junior high, heading into high school. One of my best friends to this day, his name's Clay Hines. He plays bass, I played guitar. We both loved the Chili Peppers, sort of grow from there. Like, it's almost that perfect sort of concoction, I suppose. They're just one of those staple bands, and Stadium was again quite literally that first album that really got me into them. But as I'm sure you've got bands that you sort of find one of their newer albums at the time. We're saying this 15 years later, newer album. But you get into their newer albums at the time and you sort of work your way back. And the cool thing for me with the Chili Peppers is, like, obviously with a ton of the songs on Stadium, they've got that real hard, heavy funk element to them. But you got a lot of diversity on Stadium, as you do with a lot of double albums. The cool thing for me was working back and sort of seeing, I guess what I see is Stadium is the culmination of a lot of what they did, sort of seeing that broken down into its individual pieces. So like you look at Blood Sugar Sex Magic and like you talk about a hard funk album, that's it, right? You look at One Hot Minute, and that for me is sort of more, I don't like saying the cliche, but like they're more melodic. I know a lot of people have their complaints about when Dave Navarro was on guitar for him, and there certainly are my preferences with guitar players that played with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he probably wouldn't be them. But there's a lot of great stuff. You look at Aeroplane, you listen to even little stuff like P and what Flea does with that, and maybe it's a bit in the best possible way, a very childlike song on that album, but it sort of, again, gives that melodic little piece to it. And then you dig into their early stuff with Hillel, and he's just incredible. He's just incredible. You talk about all-time great funk guitar players, and like, it just speaks to the high quality that like you can have the debate whether he's the greatest or whether John Frusciante is the greatest Chili Peppers guitar player of all time, or even Josh Klinghoffer, right? Like the stuff that he did over the last 2 albums was pretty incredible, and he had some big shoes to fill. So again, it's a bit of a rambly answer. The short story is right around Stadium was when I started to get into him. But it was really a process from there of doing the deep dives, I suppose.
I know what you mean, because so last month I had my brother on, and we talked about Wasting Light by Foo Fighters.
Cool, yeah.
And that's the album prior, Echo Silence. That's when I sort of took notice. That's the first time I went and saw them in concert, and then that cemented it. But then Wasting Light was the album where, like, okay, they're my number 2. Like, Kiss is always going to be my number 1 band. The Foo Fighters are my number 2 band. Like, that's the album that cemented it. So I know exactly what you're saying. So and you talked about how Stadium's like a culmination. It's also like an end of an era. This is the last album with Frusciante for a while, right?
Yeah, and like it's so disappointing. It's such a first world problem to complain about, but like I had tickets to go see their reunion with Frusciante in Boston. They were part of a festival that the Foo Fighters, I think, were even headlining the first night of.
Okay.
It was in May 2020. So as far as an album and that, I really, like, I can't speak to if they're doing anything new. Of course, it's a lot like wrestling in the sense of like everything's kept very under wraps. You know, I think there's a lot of parallels in that sense. But it really was the end of an era. And talk about going out, and again, using going out, knowing what hopefully is going to happen when things clear up and we get the reunion that we've all been craving. But as far as getting out on a high note, man, you really couldn't have done it better. You really, really couldn't have done it better. Like, again, it's culmination of their work is the best way I can put it. It really is. You know, you listen to the big hits and the stuff that I'm sure you were familiar with before, like you said, before we started recording, you did the deep dive onto it, right? Like, even if this was an album, they cut out sort of the stuff that maybe you didn't know, or the stuff that wasn't the radio hits. Like, you'd fill a single killer album of 12 tracks, whether it's Danny California, Snow, whether it's any of those, whether it's like Tell Me Baby. Like, that's a song that I think still is underappreciated for Chili Peppers lore, I suppose. And it's so good.
So I was gonna talk about that. I'm not typically a double album guy unless it's like a greatest hits or a live album. You know, it's material that's not new. You know, it's all familiar material. I find when it's a brand new studio album that's double album, they tend to be a little bloated, I guess. And this one, I mean, there's definitely, especially on the second disc, I think the first disc is near perfect. The first disc of this album, and you know, we'll get into it here in a little bit, but the first disc of this album is stellar. I liked it way more than I even could have imagined I would have. Once you get in the second disc, especially towards the second half of the second disc, that's where it's kind of like, okay, you know, for me, it kind of was like, okay, we probably could have trimmed, especially when I think I read that they wrote 38 songs for it. For the in the process of writing for this album. They originally wanted to make it like release like 3 separate single albums, but decided to just release a double album in one shot here. I probably would have, you know, from an outsider's perspective, I probably would have preferred the 3 single album approach, but still, there's no denying this is a really great album.
Yeah, and for me, I've got a lot of time for double albums. It's definitely my bias with it, but like The Wall, Physical Graffiti, those were sort of my staple albums as a kid. Like, I'm talking 7, 8, 9 years old. One of my first memories with music is driving home at like 2, 3 in the morning from the airport, listening to Kashmir. Like, you just, I sort of got those ingrained in me that like, I'm very much, and I think as an old school music fan yourself for the most part, like, it's been sort of ingrained in me that when you get an album, you listen to an album. I know it's, again, like a very old school in the most positive sense.
Yes.
I'm an old fogey in the most negative sense. But that's sort of the way that I've liked to listen to a lot of my favorite albums. So for me, like, there's always songs on albums, whether double albums, single albums, live albums, even that that I could cut out, like Led Zeppelin 4. I'm not a big fan of Four Sticks.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's not my favorite song by any means, but I get what it means to the album in lack of a better way to put it. And I think for Stadium, that really applies. I will also give the caveat that when I'm looking off camera, like you said, it's a double album. So I am cheating. I've got the album list pulled up because I ain't forgetting anything.
Yeah.
But I'm getting that one out of the way early.
No, that's fine. Like I said, I got a bunch of notes down here, so I'll be looking down below the screen for quite a bit of it. So it's no big deal.
Beauty. It's like I was telling you, I always feel rude when I'm not looking at people, and it's so hard to always be doing it on Zoom and all that. No, I'm not used to it through all of this, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So Stadium Arcadium, it's released May 9th, 2006. So we're right upon the 15th anniversary, which is crazy. I was working at Kmart at the time, and I remember when it was released. I remember like stocking it on the new release end cap. And
cool.
Stuff like that. So
very cool. I was quite literally probably a month before my grade 9 grad.
Okay.
A little less than a month. Sorry, because it would have been like June 1st. They always like to do cheesy stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, grade 9 grad. I was working at Safeway for what that's worth. We didn't have an album section.
It's the first Chili Peppers album to go `1 in the U.S. It debuted at #1. It sold 442,000 copies in the first week, which is crazy to think about today.
Yeah, and like you can't really compare. At least I can't.
Bands would kill to sell that amount of
exactly streaming versus albums. Like I have no idea what goes into the actual monetization of stuff like that. #1, but like it's just hard to compare when you've got numbers like that. Again, you go back to stuff like The Wall in the 70s and you look at it selling 28 million albums. Like it's nuts. Nuts. It just doesn't seem the same.
I did a show on Limp Bizkit's My Way last month.
Awesome.
As it pertains to WrestleMania 17, and I was looking at the numbers for Chocolate Starfish, and it was just insane, like
mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
In today's context, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's certified 3 times platinum here in the U.S. Up in Canada, in your neck of the woods, it also debuted at #1, selling 64,000 copies the first week,
which is like most Canadians.
Yes. It's 4 times platinum in Canada, selling over 400,000. So I'm guessing platinum is 100,000 up there.
Yeah, we've got different rules. Again, when you got to adjust for scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. It got nominated for 7 Grammys, which is the most in their history. And they won 5 of them, including Best Rock Album and Best Boxed or Special Limited Edition Package.
Which is a cool Grammy to win.
Yeah.
Like, go for the big one. As a fan of like really obscure stats, like those would be the cool ones for me to win. That'd be the one like right in the front of the mantelpiece. What's that for? Having the best boxed set?
That's definitely one of those ones they give before the show air, before the broadcast starts.
It's a pre-show match.
It's a dark match award. Yeah, exactly.
This is to entice the viewers to buy into the Grammy pay-per-view.
They recorded it at the mansion in LA, which is the same place they recorded Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Yep.
Apparently this place is haunted.
Yep, that's what I've heard too. Actually, Anthony Kiedis, if you've had the opportunity to read Scar Tissue, he goes into a deep dive as far as how that whole recording process went.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you haven't read it, for me, again, my full bias is quite literally showing, but it's just a fantastic book. Fleas as well, but his is a really cool read in that he really dives into you can tell there's going to be a second book in Fleas. Whereas the only reason I would think that Anthony Kiedis would write another one is because his finished it like by the way, just naturally time-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so much has happened since then.
Oh yeah.
Fleas set his up for a second. Kiedis, like his was definitive, for lack of a better way to put it. But yeah, it's very, very cool. I would just highly suggest that. I would be doing a great disservice if I was to try and tell the stories because as you can tell from Mr. Kiedis's lyrics, which is a tough sentence to say, that guy can tell a story better than I can.
Definitely can. Yeah. It's produced by Rick Rubin, who also produced the previous 4 Chili Pepper albums. And as I said, they wrote 38 songs for this, 28 of which made the album. And so, like, they've released 37 of the 38 at various times, B-sides and whatnot, over the course of years. So it's not like...
And I've always loved that. That's why I'm a firm, you know, to again go back to your point earlier, like the B-sides and all of that they've released from this album and their later albums as well. They're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. You know, we talked about Frusciante, this being his last album. At the time, he was influenced by the Mars Volta and Brandy.
Yeah.
Which is just a weird combo.
Not a bad combo, just certainly not a typical combo.
It's not, not something you typically would imagine go together, but hey.
Why not?
This is the first album he really used overdubs too on his guitar parts.
Yeah.
And then he also used a modular synthesizer on some songs, which when they were rehearsing for tour, caused some songs to have to be reworked.
I didn't know that. Very cool.
This is disclaimer, this is all from Wikipedia, so maybe not. I didn't check the notations, so I don't know where the information was coming from, but it sounded good. So but yeah, so normally on here I like to go track by track, but seeing as we said there's 28 songs, we're gonna go disc by disc because it is a 2-disc set. So starting on disc 1, obviously we kick off with 2 huge singles. Danny California, which I guess originally was titled Wu-Tang.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Great name though.
Yeah.
Sounds like nothing to F with.
Yeah. This was a single. It peaked at number 6 on the Hot 100, which is like the big chart. Like you're competing against pop stars at that point.
And an excellent music video. If you haven't seen it, again, something to check out. But
that's the video where they like go through like different eras of like music. Yeah.
I don't know where you were in the MTV Much Music generation, but I feel like as a 29-year-old, I'm like right at the tail end of when they would actually an hour of videos a day.
Yeah. By this time I was, but this is also when they're sort of starting to phase that out. I think it was more VH1 playing videos at this point. I missed most of MTV's heyday because we didn't have cable growing up. We didn't have cable till like my sophomore or junior year of high school. So
we only had Much Music.
Yeah. So
and they would occasionally show music videos on YTV as like the commercial breaks.
Yeah. But Danny California, it won 2 Grammy Awards for Best Rock Song and Best Rock Performance by a duo or group with vocal. I really enjoyed finding out that like this song is the story of a girl who's been in 2 previous Chili Pepper songs.
Yeah.
So
who would have thought that the Chili Peppers would mention California? It also for me is the genesis, I suppose, of like a pretty fantastic Tom Petty story, and not like a long one by any means, but I guess there were a lot of people, and you can obviously hear the similarities between this and Mary Jane's Last Dance.
It was there was a DJ in Delaware on a talk station who was like, "Hey, that sounds just like Mary Jane's Last Dance by Tom Petty."
Yeah.
And it is very similar. There is a subtle difference though. Tom Petty did not sue the Chili Peppers.
He literally said just he didn't want to.
Yeah.
Tom Petty
did not spare Sam Smith, however. Sam Smith got that lawsuit slapped on him quick.
Fair cop. That's a fair cop. But absolutely fantastic track. Like I the way I compare it is like when I absolutely love a wrestling match, I could go on for days, but sometimes you just simply need to sit down and watch this match. This is just like a must listen as far as I'm concerned. It's great for any situation. I think you could say that about a lot of songs on this album. And then Snow, like following it right up with that. I guess on the album, because if I remember correctly, it was Tell Me Baby was the second single and then Snow was the third.
I believe that's how it went. I didn't.
I'm happy to be fact checked. Don't get me wrong there.
I know they both were singles. I didn't take down the order of what I know. Danny California was the first one, and after that,
we'll call it a fact. We'll call it a fact for now. And if anybody calls you out in the comments, send them my way.
I will.
But another song, like it's you can listen to it whether it's 10 p.m., 10 a.m. You're at a hockey game, you're by a fire. Like it's just a good tune. It's just a good tune in a very different. Again, to use that sort of light and shade comparison, that yin and yang, that dichotomy of sounds that they do.
Yeah.
This is very different than Danny California, but it's very clearly both of them are very clearly Chili Peppers songs, you know?
Well, exactly. Because Danny's very, especially the chorus. That chorus is hard rock as you get. Like
it just slaps.
Yes, it does. And like you said, Snow is very much more mellow. I always like to find a wrestling connection with these albums. Snow was the official theme song for WrestleMania 24. I don't know if you remember that.
I wasn't I wasn't consistently watching week by week, pay-per-view by pay-per-view then.
Gotcha.
No, didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah, the John's guitar part that goes through Snow is just great. It just sounds so cool.
So much with like obviously there's a lot of intricacy with the I guess rhythm guitar and the picking there, but his solo work on this album I thought was really fantastic for what he didn't do in a lot of the songs, right? Like a lot of them weren't overly complex. A lot of them were quite literally just like different playing the same note in different octaves. Like you listen to this, especially in Michigan was the same way, where he's quite literally just climbing the neck of the guitar. I think the solo part of Snow quite literally had 4 notes in it. And it was perfect. Yeah. It was absolutely perfect. He was very, very good and is still very, very good at serving the song, not playing stunt guitar for a lot of stuff.
Yes. So along with the 28 songs on this album, there's also a commentary track, which is genius. I wish more bands would do. Foo Fighters, again, going back to Foo Fighters, for the album they just released earlier this year, Medicine at Midnight, on Spotify, there's a playlist where that'll play a song, and then after that there'll be a couple minute track.
Didn't know that.
Yes, of Dave and a couple of the other guys talking about the process of writing each song. And
I used to always love those on like the DVD extras that people would do for TV.
That was a
like
huge
watch
thing.
Along with the cast.
That was a huge thing in this era, was the commentary tracks on DVDs. But on that, they're talking about Snow, and it cracks me up because they're kind of busting Anthony's chops here about at the end when he's like, "Hey, oh yeah." They said he was using his big boy voice.
Little more gruff and it's Eddie Vedder at that point.
Right. So what else on disc 1? Those are the 2 singles, I think. Those are the only 2.
I want to say, because I always feel like they put out like 4 or 5 singles from an album, but like once the album comes out, it becomes about the album, not the singles, you know? So I always tend to forget what comes later.
Right.
So I'm going to go with yes, those are the 2, but we're probably going to get, again, send them my way when I get fact checked.
I know here, I don't think this was actually released as a single, but I know here, I specifically remember hearing, especially in Michigan, on the radio. Here.
All of these have been played on the radio at some point or another. I'm certain. All of them have. Like Wet Sand, I'm certain I've heard as well. She's Only 18, I've heard as well. Again, like it just shows the range these guys have. Whether you go from like Charlie to Wet Sand to Hey. Like Hey is a song. I really love this album because I can go through and it almost feels like you find a new song every time, even though you've heard it before. It's like, oh shit, I didn't recognize that. Hey's been one of them for me over the last little bit. Just a good tune. And it's got, again, that very mellow vibe. Frusciante's backing vocals on this album too.
I was going to mention that.
Oh my God.
There was a song specifically. I have notes in 2 different places because I was listening to the album at work, and so like obviously I didn't have my computer with me, so like I was typing on my notes on my phone as I'm. But there was Slow Cheetah is like the first song where his harmonies and background vocals really was like that's. I mean. It's just
that stripped my mind too. He has a really, really great job on the slower songs.
I love
a bad job on the like faster paced ones, but like he's just got such I'd almost say that he's a better technical singer than Anthony Kiedis in a lot of ways, and that's just my personal preference. But like this is going to turn into the John Frusciante show for me, which is never a bad thing. But he's just got, again, such a melodic voice. I know it's a phrase that I've used a lot, and I said off the bat I didn't want it to become cliche, but he just serves those slower songs very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It stripped my mind. The opening. I love the effect they have on the vocal. The whoa. Yeah.
Almost like the tremolo to it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I was like, that's a cool thing. What else do we I love
Warlocks is fantastic. Yep. The only ones as I look at this that I wouldn't make that comment, like Come On Girl, like not my favorite potentially, but that's really about it as far as the first.
That was really the only one on the first disc that where I didn't really feel, because all the rest of them, you know, we talked about Charlie. I love the where it changes over from in the main song, and it's that other riff that
their jams are just good.
Yes,
there's really no other way to put it. Like they break down like a funk band.
Yes,
you know, with a lot of typical rock music, metal music, you don't get that, like, I guess, gear shift, for lack of a better way to put it. Like you sort of know where they're going. They're going to shift up the fifth for the solo or the chorus, right? Like they can just pretty well drop dead with a lot of stuff and almost start a new song halfway through a song.
And then Hump to Bump goes back to old school, you know. That's the funky Chili Peppers. That might have been a single because it did have a video that was directed by Chris Rock.
You could be right there, and I feel like you are right there, so I'm going to revise my earlier fact with a new fact.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Flea. Do I really need to comment on Flea being very good at the bass guitar?
No, you don't. It's sickening. Flea's one of those guys that, like, it's like Flea and Steve Harris and Geddy Lee,
Victor Wooten. Yeah,
there's like this echelon of bass players where I'm just like I hate them. I love them, but I hate them because it's like I can't. I play bass. Yeah. I'm not a bass player. I always make that comment because I'm a hack. I will freely admit that I'm a hack. And
I'd have a good competition with Gene Simmons.
There you go. Gene is very underrated though as a bass player himself.
He's gotten there. I should have found a better example for that because
that's the classic. I get it. No, yeah. Trust
me. Who was it? Like, I think it was about Sid Vicious that they always used to say he was a better bass player when his bass wasn't plugged in.
There you go.
That's the one I should have gone with. Apologies to Gene on that one.
That's okay.
Like, I shouldn't shoot shots at Kiss. Why am I doing that?
You know, I mean, it's you know,
slap on the wrist.
It's like Joe Louis Arena. It's okay if I bash Joe Louis Arena, but if anyone else talks about what a dump Joe Louis Arena was, I'll fight him.
Yeah, but them's fighting words. We're gonna have fisticuffs.
But I will call it a dump all day long and not feel sorry about it. So yeah, it's one of those.
Exactly.
It's one of those things. Especially in Michigan. Obviously.
We're gonna talk about the Joe Louis. Great transition.
Exactly. This is probably if it's not my favorite song on the album, it's my second favorite song on the album.
Oh yeah. I always love it, and like Nothing Else Matters isn't really the best comparison just because of the paces of the song, but I love when bands again sort of flip that script and where you would typically expect like almost I don't like the comparison because Nirvana's as well one of my favorite bands, but like almost the quiet loud dynamic that they were so known for.
Yeah.
I love when it's flipped and you get that really, really heavy verse and slow it down for the chorus. And they're just fantastic. Like it's just a well-written tune.
Yeah. And then Wet Sand, on that commentary track, this was a song that musically Frusciante came with. And apparently, from what I gather, at times the songwriting chemistry in the band was a little not cohesive, like
fragmented would be the word I use. Yeah.
Because they made a comment where, he's got this guitar part and he's playing it and stuff. And they're like, that's good. And while he was playing it, he had a vocal melody that he didn't have words, but he had a melody. And Anthony makes a comment that he asked John if he can keep the vocal melody, because I guess a lot of times when John would come up with music, he's like, obviously you can have the music, but if I've got a vocal melody, I'd like you, Anthony, to come up with a different one, which seems kind of weird. Like, if I'm writing a song, like I'm like, I know how the music and how the vocal melody should go, but it is what it is. And then also like the Wet Sand part at the end, he's like, did you say wet sand? And John's like, he wasn't really like keen on telling him what he was saying, but he's like, come on, I heard you say wet sand. He's like, yeah. So that's how the song came. And again, I really love, there's a couple songs like this where it's like, there's a whole second part of the song. Wet Sand is one of those, and it's a good song up until then, but when it comes into the
almost gets to like the real chorus.
Yes.
It's fantastic. They've actually, so the couple on this, if well, I'm sure you do, everyone, if you're talking to me right now, you've got the internet. They did a version of this at Pink Pop, I think in 2006. Pink Pop, or I can't pronounce it, Pukkel Pop? Pukkel Pop? Whatever. It's in the Netherlands is the festival.
Okay.
But they did a version of it in 2006 that was absolutely fantastic. But my favorite part of it, that I'm sure you can sort of speak to as far as the commentary track goes, is when they do their live shows. If you've ever seen them live, you'll get it. Like the little interactions they have, it's not like they carry on like a full 15-minute conversation in between songs.
Right.
It's like a quick little quip or like a quick little 30-second interaction that they'll have with each other for the most part, and then jump into something else. So like, I can't remember the exact context. The song itself was great, but they did like a full monologue, I suppose, on KFC prior to it, if I remember correctly. And again, it's like sort of speaks to the ridiculousness of Flea and Keaton. Like all of them just have like this again, cheesy, but like the family chemistry to them, where like it's all inside jokes that are funny because they find it funny, not because it's maybe traditionally funny.
Yes.
So there's that. They've also replaced it a couple of times. I've been lucky enough to see the Chili Peppers 4 times.
Okay.
They've replaced Under the Bridge a couple of times with either this or Soul to Squeeze in the set list. And like, this works really, really well. It's a very lofty comparison, but to say that like when they play this, you don't miss Under the Bridge,
that's quite a statement.
It says a lot. Yeah. That's and like, I love that song. It ain't a shot by any means.
Yeah, no,
that's everything for it.
Yeah. That's wow.
It's just a good tune.
Anything else on disc 1? Anything else you wanted to point out? Anything you wanted to hit?
Not particularly, outside of like we didn't go song by song, but we did mention pretty well all of them. So want to give the shout to Stadium Arcadium as well. Yes. Title tracks I feel like get underappreciated sometimes. This was a really good one.
Again, coming from a sort of a novice, this to me, and my brain is weird anyway. I hear similarities and stuff that may or may not be there, but a lot of times other people don't hear. This had it felt like a style wise, like a sister song to Californication. Like it had that same vibe to me.
Yeah. Sort of like, again, it's maybe not the perfect comparison on my end, but like the driving through a desert comparison. Yeah. I absolutely love it. That's a great call. I like that. I'm going to steal it from you when we're off screen.
Okay, that works. That's good.
No, but that's about it. I think you hit the nail on the head when you were kicking it off there. And that, like, disc 1, if it was to have been released as one of those 3 solo albums you were talking about, like, this was a perfect album.
Yes. Yeah. No.
You can get.
Yeah.
Especially, like, you know, we talk about the album sales earlier. It's not like 2006 was a great time still for albums. Like, I made that Pink Floyd comparison earlier, and it still was
decline.
Right. So to present this as a full album, like, really, Taylor Swift is the only person who's still presenting full albums that people treat as full albums now.
Again,
and that's nothing against others.
To make the wrestling comparison, it's like, you know, a bad rating in 2006 was probably like a 3. And they would kill to get a 3 on a Monday night right now. Like,
fair point. Very fair point.
I think Vince would literally take someone's life to get a 3 rating on Monday Night Raw right now. But I digress. Moving on to disc 2, like I said, like this, like the first half of it, just a continuation of the first disc to me. Like, it's excellent. But then once I get to a certain point, it's like, I don't have notes for any of these songs because there's nothing jumped at me where it was like, no, don't get me wrong, they're not bad songs. It's just not as...
You didn't have that holy cow moment.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. And that's fair. It took me actually for a couple of these, like I talked about with Hey earlier. Some of them did have to grow on me, or some of them did have to come in like a later run through, because not that you get tired of songs, but when you know, most people, you listen to the front 10 songs and then, you get to your destination. Like, I listen to a lot of my albums in the car. So when you get to a destination, it's like, I've got 3 songs left. Well, I'm not going to sit here for 15 minutes, get out, go from there. So a lot of them did grow on me as like those newer, but not new songs. But like Storm in a Teacup, fantastic. I think that a lot of these songs may have fallen under, like, I was going to talk about Make You Feel Better as like a pop song, as like more of a straight up pop song than you maybe saw earlier on the album.
Right.
But it's still a great song. Yeah. Again, I really like John Frusciante's backing vocals, especially on the last verse where he's like not really singing them for the most part, but almost like shouting in the background with Kiedis.
Yeah.
I really love that. Storm in a Teacup's a great song. Maybe more of a...
I believe that was a single as well.
Yeah, and maybe again more like
once I heard, I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember that song. So yeah, I believe Storm in a Teacup was a single. But speaking of singles, you mentioned it earlier. Tell Me Baby. This is the other one that's in contention as my favorite song on the album. Such
good.
A great song.
It finds a lot of the stuff we're talking about earlier. That hardcore funk, that sort of opposite of Light and Shade.
Just slapping his ass off on the verses of the song.
Right, and then, even just like going from that into just the mellowed out
the chorus. It's such a beautiful chorus, and like, you know, it's just, I do remember the video to this one. They had a bunch of local like musicians and people like come and audition, and then the ones that made the cut when they came back for a callback, like the members of the band would just kind of take turns and like sitting in with it. Like, it was like this really cool, like shifting, like different lineups at different, you know, constantly changing. It was a really fun video. I remember.
It's fantastic. I think you hit all the points I would have. It's just, again, one of those, you need to listen to this song. If you're to give like the sample pack from this album, this would have to be on there. It would absolutely have to be on there.
There are a couple songs on this too that I would describe as beautiful, because they are. First one, Hard to Concentrate.
Really great.
And I love, like, he doesn't necessarily sing the verses. It's more like a spoken word type delivery. And it's really cool.
This was a more mellow side of the album, because like you look through all of it. Like if is just such, again, just a beautiful song.
So beautiful.
She Looks to Me, I think, is very different than those two. Still a bit of that adjacent, maybe sister song like you were talking about earlier. but still a very mellowed out tune, a very laid back tune, a little heavier in the chorus portion of it, but that ain't a bad thing. That ain't a bad thing. Sometimes you need an electric guitar in a softer song.
Right. Yes.
I think it's fantastic. Like you said, though, maybe a couple on this one that I wasn't like Animal Bar.
Yeah.
Maybe doesn't stand out for me. Like when I talked to you earlier about I needed to have this album list pulled up, not only because it's a double album, but like nothing against the song. It just would have been one of the ones that I forgot. Right. I would have struggled a little bit with the second half of the album.
Yes. Yeah.
It for me, though, that's maybe the reason I love it as an album more, right? Is like because I'll usually go through and listen to this, especially as an album. You know, if I've got my shuffle on my iPod, I'll stop for Danny California. I'll stop for those, like you say, the radio hits. It's rare that I'll stop for like We Believe, but when I'm listening to this as an album, I listen, I enjoy, and then just sort of go from there.
Yeah. And actually I'm kind of the opposite a little bit, because like, again, a song like Animal Bar, again, especially like I said, as you're working your way through this album front to back, you get to Animal Bar and it's like it's track 20 of 28 or whatever it is. Like, you're not necessarily, again, you're not, I don't want to seem like I was like, okay, when is this thing going to be over? But at the same time, it's like, when is this thing going to be over? Like one of those like juxtaposition type things.
Yeah.
But after I listened to the album front to back a few different times, I put it on shuffle, the album on shuffle. And a couple of the songs that I was like not crazy about listening to it in order, when it comes up on shuffle, I was like, okay, this isn't as bad, you know. I'm not as against this song as
you're not as conditioned to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Maybe I might just prefer that conditioning.
Yeah. But I'm like you. I listen to an album front to back.
Yeah.
You know.
And they closed it out so strong. I'm a real sucker, like you talked about earlier with Hard to Concentrate. I'm a real sucker for almost like the spoken word over a great jam. And Death of a Martian, fantastic outro. Absolutely fantastic outro. A really good song in and of itself, but like that's really what makes that song for me. And it's like a wrestling match, again, to use the comparison that we've been using the whole time, right? If you start and close a wrestling match well, sometimes people are going to forget or be a little more forgiving for the stuff they didn't love as much throughout, right? Because they got those two strong memories. And when you're closing with this, and when you're opening with Danny California, or like even Desecration Smile, if you're just looking at side B, I suppose, or disc 2. Yeah. God, I aged myself.
This would have been more like side C.
Side C, side D.
Yeah.
You've got strong openers. You've got strong closers.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple rockers on the second Ready Made. It's just a badass rocking song. I love
like it's just groovy.
Yes.
It is a groovy rock song. Like that bass kicks off the bat. It's just like you almost get your head bopping before you even notice your head's bopping. I also love when you sort of try and give that live environment to a song, and even Anthony just yelling like "Clean it up, Johnny."
Yes,
there it is. I loved it because it gives it that live.
I love stuff like that, like in "Talk Dirty to Me" by Poison. When CC pick up that guitar and talk, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it adds so much.
Exactly.
You know, it's makes it feel real. I know that's a kind of very cliche way to put it, but like it just makes it feel like they're not, you know, to tear the curtain back, using the wrestling phrase. Like, you know, that albums like this can be recorded. Like you talked about earlier, they recorded this in the house, but this can be recorded like in 4 different corners of the world by 4 different random people. And even if this was the case, stuff like that makes it not feel like that, which I think is important. People love their authenticity, whether it's in this, whether it's cooking, whether it's professional wrestling. So it's nice to have that little bit of added authenticity included.
And then 21st Century was like a cool, dare I say, disco, like dance feel to it.
I'll take that dare. Yeah. I'll take that dare. That's a good dare. Sort of more dancey number. Yeah. I'll agree with you there.
Yeah.
Not potentially.
Not
it might fall under like that animal bar for me, and that like if this was to come up, I'd maybe this would be the song I made my phone call during.
Right.
When I'm listening to the album.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's the best way to put it.
Cool. Anything else? Oh, Turn It Again at the end. John just rips it. He just...
Yeah, we talked earlier about how he's very good at being subtle with his guitar playing. He's also very good at slapping you in the face with how good he is at playing the guitar. This was the case. Also, just because we haven't yet, shout out to Chad Smith. That guy is also in the conversation for one of the greatest drummers of all time. Not only is he like very innovative, but like it's the same way. Whenever people tell me Ringo Starr couldn't drum, I just want to like scold them.
Yes.
Almost like timing is the most important thing you can have for a drummer, and especially when you've got songs like this that like timing wise, like I don't claim to be a great musician, but timing wise I know that they're very like 3/4 4/4 timing for the most part.
Yes, but
they're still very complex songs as is. Like I don't drum, but I can't imagine it's easy to drum along to a song like Tell Me Baby. Right. So huge shout to him, not only for, again, the innovation that he portrays throughout all the music, but simply for being able to like keep some damn flawless timing throughout all of it too.
For sure. Well, any other thoughts? Any other?
Yeah, listen to this album. That's all I've got.
Yes, I will.
As far as it overall goes, I really am excited to see John Frusciante back with the Chili Peppers. I know that a lot of new albums from older or reuniting bands sometimes do get, I guess, that initial pop before people say, oh, maybe this wasn't very good. I personally hope they record a new album, but like we were talking about off the bat, if this was to be a swan song for the Chili Peppers, John Frusciante album era, I suppose, like you couldn't have ended it any better. You really, really couldn't have. The only thing that I would have hoped is like, if they're ever going to put out those other 8-9 songs that they recorded for this, I hope some of them, I don't know if you're familiar with their Live at Hyde Park album that they did a couple of years before this. No. There were a couple of songs on there. Rolling Sly Stone and what was the other one now? Leverage of Space. Okay. I would hope that those would be part of it if there were to be any new recordings. Or like you said, I just hope we get the one that they haven't released from this.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Well, thanks again, Spencer, for joining me.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Well, for the most part, I am pretty accessible under one convenient domain at Love Wrestling CA on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of your social media platforms where podcasts are played, where videos are viewed. You can find us at that. Personally, I'm really only all that active on Twitter. I do have an Instagram, but mostly it's for photos of my dog more than it is me. So if you want to get a hold of me, it is at Spenny Love. On Instagram, it is at Spenny and the Jets. That's about it. That's really about it. Love Wrestling, though, would be the place I would suggest. It's not only me. I hope you enjoyed what I did on this here podcast because I had a blast doing it, but there are a lot of great people doing great stuff there. So don't just show me some support. So show some great people some support.
I enjoy the, what is it? The anatomy of a promo or the
poetry of a promo. It is. And yeah, like that's just, it's so cool. The little community we built there, I suppose, because Mr. J, I hadn't met before we started getting organized, I suppose, for Love Wrestling in about November, December. Hadn't met him. I had listened to the podcast a couple of times because Zach with the Smark and Friends podcast, who's also now with Love Wrestling, he just suggested like, hey, he's a great dude. He does great work. He'd be a great fit for all of those reasons. And like, yeah, he's bang on. I'm glad you enjoy it as much as I do. Yes. Like I always say that it's one of the nice little perks of getting to edit and throw the podcasts up on Apple and all of that sort of stuff is I get to listen to them before anyone else. Yes. And usually I'm listening to them at like 5:30 in the morning. So I've already got that little bit of delirium and it kicks you just into overdrive. He's hilarious. And I'm very happy to have him, Zach, and everybody else as part of it. That's why I always say, like, it's really cool if people want to follow me, and I hope they enjoy what I do. But like, there's a lot of other great people outside of me, and let's show them the support, right?
Absolutely.
And thank you. This was a blast. It's fun to come and talk Chili Peppers. It's always cool as a guy who talks wrestling behind a microphone for a lot of the time to transition out. I tried to keep the wrestling references at a minimum, but
that's all right.
You do a good job.
I mean, people know that they're getting a little bit of both here on this channel, so it's all good. It's all good, man. So
it is appreciated.
All right. Well, you can follow me at IbanezChris on Twitter, and then please give a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Let Spencer know how awesome he was on the show today, because he was.
Oh,
and then
cavities, you're too sweet.
I will talk to you later. See ya.